Hey, what's going on? So today I'm going to give you 11 tips to get more interest and offers from college coaches. So without further ado, let's dive in. Tip number one is that you should not CC every coach on staff when you send an email. Now, if you don't know what CC means, it just means that you're sending one email to multiple college coaches, right? There might be 4 or 5 coaches on staff, or 15 or 20 if you play football. But when you send that email to them, if you're sending the same email to all of them and you're attaching all of them, then you can't personalize that email. When you say, hey, coach, and then you add their name, if there's 4 or 5 different ones, are you going to add the same name 4 times? Probably not. That would be a little bit weird. And so now it's just an impersonal email. And when that happens, you're significantly less likely to get a response. Now, there's a couple different things that you can do in place. The first thing that you can do is you can pick the one that you think is going to give you the best chance of getting a response, like the one who has to do with recruiting, who you think is actually going to read it and watch your video and maybe respond to you. That is one option. The other option is that you can email all 4 or 5 coaches on staff. You just email them individually, right? Instead of sending one email to all 4 of them, you would send 4 individual emails and personalize it to each one of those 4. When you do this, you will see a much higher response rate than if you were to send one email to all 4 and it were just an impersonal email. The second tip is that when you are looking for the contact information for these college coaches, beware of outdated databases. Now, there are databases out there that will give you the email addresses for college coaches. But the thing is that these staffs change all the time, right? Coaches are leaving and they're resigning, they're going to different schools. And so if your contact information is not updated and whatever software you're using or whatever database you're using is not actively updating that contact information, you're going to be using old email addresses and your emails are never going to reach college coaches. Now, tip number 3 is to avoid what I call information overload. Information overload is where you are providing the coach with so much information in the first email that it paralyzes them and it completely overwhelms them. I like to say that recruiting is like dating, right? When someone goes on a date, they're usually not ready to get married after the first date. And why is that? Because on the first date, you're usually not divulging like your whole life situation, right? You're just sort of getting a vibe check. Do I like hanging out with this person? And really the question that you're trying to answer is, should there be a second date? That's it, right? And then the second date is, should there be a third and a fourth and a fifth date, until eventually you go on enough dates with someone that you say, yes, this is the person that I want to marry. Now, the recruiting process is very similar. The first email is just the first conversation. There will be more information about you or about your kid that is going to come out over subsequent conversations in the recruiting process. You don't have to feel like you have to jam it all into the first email because the college coach needs to know how amazing your kid is. I promise you, they will learn how amazing your kid is, but it's not going to happen all in the first email. And actually, you could be doing yourself more harm than good by including an amazing amount of information in that first email. All we're trying to do is get the coach to watch the video, so beware of information overload. Tip number 4 is that you should be using simple subject lines rather than long or complex ones. A lot of times players will send me the emails and the subject lines that they're using when they're contacting college coaches. And a lot of times those subject lines are like 30 words long. They have the GPA in there and the height and weight and stats and all these reasons that a coach should recruit them. But if your subject line is 30 words long, you got to remember, a college coach is only going to see the first 6 or 7 of them, right? And here's the thing. The point of the subject line is to get the coach to open the email. That's all you're trying to accomplish. And when that's the case, simple works better than complex. Remember, you're only trying to get them to open the email. So instead of having a 30-word subject line, keep it much shorter, 5 to 7 words max. And the whole point is to get the coach to open the email. Tip number 5 is that everything in your email should point the coach to watching your video, okay? Because that is the number one piece of evidence that's gonna make a college coach want to recruit you, is that they're gonna see your video, they're gonna watch how you move, they're gonna watch your skills and your technique, and they're gonna go, yes, this is the player for me. So everything in your email, from the intro to the body to the signature at the bottom, should be centered around getting the coach to watch your video. It is the only thing that you're trying to accomplish with this email. You're not even trying to get a scholarship with this email. You're not trying to get a phone call. You're not trying to get a visit. The only thing that you're trying to accomplish with this first email and this first conversation is to get the coach to watch the video. Tip number 6 is that you should email from a position of strength. A lot of times when players email college coaches, they'll say things like, "It's my dream to play for your school," or they'll beg the coach to give them a response. But here's the thing, every time that you include a line like this, you are devaluing yourself and you're reducing the chances that a college coach actually recruits you and responds to you. Why? Because the best players in the country, they don't have to beg, right? Because they're such a good player that they're actually doing the coach a favor by reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, I am the solution to your problem," right? And so when you beg, when you email from a position of weakness, you are telling the coach that he would be doing you a favor to recruit you, and that is how you don't get any responses. So when you email college coaches, you should be emailing from a position of strength. Like you are one of the best players in the country, like you have a lot of interest and offers from college coaches already, even if you don't, and you don't want to lie about that, but it should feel like that. That should be the vibe of the email, that you are actually doing the coach a favor when you reach out to them and emailing from a position of strength. Tip number 7 is which coach you should reach out to. Now, we talked about early on how you don't want to CC every coach on staff, and you can email every coach on staff individually if you'd like to, but another thing that you can do is you can email the coach that you believe is going to give you the best chance of getting a response. Now, that coach is typically the recruiting coordinator. So often on a coaching staff, you'll have one coach that is designated as the recruiting coordinator. They handle most of the recruiting matters, and that is the coach that you want to reach out to. Now, on some staffs, they won't have any coaches that are related to recruiting or involved in recruiting in any way. And when that is the case, you can just email one of the assistants. In most cases, it doesn't make sense to email the head coach. A lot of times, the head coach doesn't have very much to do with recruiting until the end of the process. Now, this isn't true in cases where it's a sport where you might only have one or two coaches on staff, because then the head coach has to take on some recruiting then. And also, as you start to get into smaller divisions, right, Division 3 or NAIA, you might have less coaches on staff, and then the head coach might do a little bit more recruiting. But for D1, D2, and a lot of schools, the head coach is not going to do very much recruiting, and you're going to be better off emailing one of the assistants or the recruiting coordinator. Tip number 8 is that it is critical that you land in the primary inbox, not the spam folder, or not the junk folder, or not the promotions folder. Because if your email lands in one of those folders, the odds that a college coach sees it are essentially zero. So it is critical that your email lands in the primary inbox. You can test this with your family members, with your friends. You can send an email to them, the exact one that you would send to college coaches, and see if it lands in their primary inbox or if it lands in one of those folders that we don't want to land in. And so this is a critical piece, because if you don't land in the primary inbox, college coaches probably won't see your email, which means they're not going to watch your video and they're not going to respond to you. Tip number 9 is that I want you to be aware of the paradox of choice. And if you're like, "Jack, what is the paradox of choice?" The paradox of choice says that the more choices that someone has to take, the less likely they are to pick the option that you want them to pick. So for instance, if there were 10 different roads that I could say, "Hey, you can take any one of those 10 roads," but secretly I wanted you to pick road number 1, then I have a 1 in 10 chance that you actually do what I want you to do. But what if I said, "Hey, there's only one road that you can pick. You're only going to be able to take that road because there are no other options." When we talk about recruiting emails and sending emails to college coaches, the option and the road that we want them to pick is watching your video, right? We already talked about this. And so when you include multiple links in your email, right, you are reducing the chances that they click on the one that you want them to click on. So when you're including a link to your Twitter account and you're including a link to your recruiting profile and you have a video link in there, but you're linking to your transcripts and your test scores and you have your coach information, right? And so all of a sudden there's 6 or 7 or 8 other links that are in your email, and all you're doing is reducing the chances that a college coach clicks on the video, the one thing that you want them to do. And so when you're emailing college coaches, we want to keep in mind the paradox of choice and remove all of the choices that we don't want them to take, so they are way more likely to do the thing everything that we want them to do. Tip number 10 is a controversial one, and that is no stats in your emails. Now, there is an exception to this, and that is if you play a time-based sport. A time-based sport would be something like track and field or swimming. Then stats really are going to be an integral piece to your recruiting process, and you should include them in your email. But if you play a skill-based sport, something like baseball, basketball, football, soccer, lacrosse, volleyball, those are skill-based sports, and you should not include stats in your emails, and we have a lot of data behind this. But let me tell you why this is and give you an example, okay? So here's an example. Let's say that you play baseball and you are a pitcher and you throw 86 miles an hour off the mound, right? And let's say that you're emailing college coaches, and remember, the goal is to get them to watch your video. That's what you're trying to accomplish. So let's say that you throw 86 in the email and then you include your video. Well, if you're emailing a college coach who is only looking for pitchers who throw 90 miles an hour and above, then he's gonna see that you throw 86 and he's never gonna watch your video. He's gonna delete your email immediately and forget that you ever existed. And that is a huge problem. Now, what if we did the reverse, right? What if he watched your video and then came across the stat? Well, let's see what would happen. So you don't include that stat in your email, you only include the video. The college coach watches your video and goes, I really like this guy. I like his pitching mechanics, his arm looks fluid. This looks like somebody I could work with. And then he comes across that same stat that just disqualified you, that you throw 86 miles an hour. The college coach is now looking at that stat through the lens of the video that they really liked. He's going, wow, I was really expecting this velo to be higher than 86. Like, he looked really fluid, he looked really athletic. That kind of surprises me. But now he might say, you know what? I need some more information on this player because I really like that video. And so now he's like, maybe we can get him from 86 to 90. Right? And so you just bought yourself another opportunity simply because of the order in which he came across your information. And so that is why you don't include stats in your emails and you point the coach to video instead. Tip number 11 is to keep your email short. Remember, college coaches get hundreds of these things. They're not going to read 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs long. They're not going to read an essay, right? And so all we're trying to do is get them to watch the video. And so the shorter that your email is, the more likely they are to actually click on your video and watch your videos. So don't write an essay. Nobody wants to read an essay. Keep your email super short. And there you have it, 11 email tips to get more interest and offers from college coaches. So if you like this video, then we got a bunch more on the channel. You can go check those out for a lot more information, and I will see you guys next time.